What's up, guys? It's your girl Mac Cox with Maccouture Crafting, and we are back with another 3-yard quilt video. If you'd like to know why I love 3-yard quilts, I will insert an iCard here of a video that tells you all about 3-yard quilts. We won't talk about it here. So I was hanging out on the Fabric Cafe's YouTube channel like I always do. Nothing, surprising there. The surprising thing is they were doing the top 10 patterns of 2021. And the number one pattern shocked me. I mean, I wish you guys could have been there to see me see what the number one pattern was because I was like, oh, I probably know because I've done what 10, 11 of their patterns now. I mean, I'm really cooking when it comes to 3-yard quilts, but I'm obsessed with them. Check out the video why. I could not believe that this was the number one selling pattern, but I should have because I've been requested to do this several times, which is rare because nobody talks to me. So the fact that people have actually requested that I do this lets me know that, yeah, this is probably the number one selling pattern. So the pattern is Old Glory. Oh my goodness. And they actually just released, it's newish, a pattern called Freedom that's like this pattern's sister, and I like it. And I'm gonna go on ahead and take a swing at that one too, probably sooner than later. But anyway, I went ahead and macked it down. So I did it in my colorway, which would be like a Tula colorway, something kind of funky. And then I did it in a traditional colorway for everybody. And I want to try to do something a little different and I want to talk about how it breaks down. Now, one thing I can say is this one here is not the kind that you would probably want to enlarge. So this is going to be a throw, which is cool because it's just a nice little size and it's not too big. You can hang it as a wall hanging. You can throw it over your couch, over your legs. It's a nice size. So on the left is the one that I macked down, and then on the right is the nice and traditional one. And I want to just look at it a little bit further so that we can go ahead and break it down. I used all JoAnn's fabrics for this. This quilt top cost me, I want to say it was 25 bucks, and you really can't beat that for a quilt top. All of these fabrics were selected from their holiday section where they pretty much carry a red, white, and blue selection all year round, and that's due to Quilts of Valor. And people love that section. I mean, that section gets turned around often. You always see new red, white, and blue fabrics coming out. But right here in this little section, you have a square, and this is really just a friendship block. So you've got some half square triangles here and some squares there, and then you have some stripes. The hardest part of this, honestly, was putting on all these borders. Borders seem like they took me forever. And there are 3 borders, with the white one being slightly smaller than the red and the blue. And then when you finish this, you're going to use the blue fabric also to do your binding. They've got it all figured out for you. The stripes were easy peasy. I Have you guys ever heard of the saying that a hard head makes a soft behind? Well, let me tell you. Donna knows when she is making her patterns how they should be constructed. So why on earth would I think that I knew better? I like to nest my seams, which means I press my seams either to the left or to the right, depending upon the pattern. And I tried to do that here, and honestly, it just caused a headache. So press your seams open. She always says press her seams open. That's why she does not include instructions on which direction to press the seams. It just complicates things. However, if you are pressing something open, please, please, please shorten your stitch length so that you don't have it coming apart at the top and lock your stitch. So when you first start sewing anything, the minute that you start sewing, sew forward a little bit, then sew backward and then you won't have any issues. Just shorten your stitch length, lock your stitches on the front and the back. So when you finish, you're going to sew down off and then come back. Sew down and then come back. And when you start, sew and come back and just lock it. Shorten it to like 2.0. Yeah, 2.0. Every machine is a little different, but just make sure that it's tight and they're not opening so you don't have any holes in your quilt. I tried to be slick and I thought I was going to be pressing to one side and the next. Listen to people. When they tell you how to do their stuff, just do it the way they say. You will run into way less headaches. Okay, and that's it. Let's go on ahead and get into this. This was a fun one. It's nice and easy. I'd say that it's beginner friendly. Um, you really want to be sure that you can sew a scant 1/4 inch just so that you don't miss these little corners here. You want them to come to a nice sharp point if you can. But that's about the only thing. This is a great, it could be a fast sew. It took me about 2 days to complete this quilt. And that wasn't sewing from sun up to sundown or anything like that. But this is affordable, it's fast, it's fun, and you can get the pattern downloaded um, on Fabric Cafe. And if you like the crazy Tula version of how I did this, this kit is available on houseofthreads.net. Okay? And I will leave that information in the description bar. All right, guys, I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye bye. So we decided to start this off this time in the JoAnn store just so that you can see all the very, very many options that they have in this particular section, in the red, white, and blue section, the holiday section, at my particular JoAnn's. I've gotten some comments about people saying that their JoAnn's doesn't look like mine, but I am very close to the JoAnn Superstore. So I probably have a few more than some, but maybe not all of them. But check out these options. They're worth popping in, especially if you're doing an Americana or whatever. 4th of July, patriotic, quilts of valor. This section is for you. And this section is a dense section. There are tons and tons of options. Some of the ones that I'm loving are, I like the blue with the small blue stars. I think that if I were choosing fabrics again for this, I would go with things that read more as a solid that aren't so busy. Um, Not that it detracts or anything like that. I think it came out beautifully, but I think that ones that read that are a little bit smaller of a print might have been a little more fun, maybe. But I know people have their own preferences and whatnot, so you can kind of figure it out how you will. So look at those stars; those are pretty too. Not the red. Well, they are. They're all red, aren't they? Oh, look. So I finally picked mine and I chose that one right there. Love it. And I had to fight with it a little bit to get it out of there, but I eventually did get it. And I love that one. That's a great one. And my white is a white on white. I love a tonal. And then for the blue, I kept it kind of, you know, I don't know, kind of traditional, I guess you could say. And look right there, before taxes, it was $25. What? Oh my goodness. I think it was a sale that they were running because JoAnn's is always running sales. Always, always. So check them out when they are definitely running a sale. First thing we're going to do is clean your edge. JoAnn's does a really good job of cutting the best they can with their scissors in the ditch, but you really want to be sure that you're starting with the clean edge. So now I'm cutting the strips for the stripes right now. You end up cutting, I want to say 6 of those. And actually 5. I think I cut 5 of them. 5 or 6. I don't know. Follow the pattern. And we are going to go on ahead and trim off just the tip there. And then we're going to start cutting for our friendship star. That's what that block is called. It's a friendship star. And we're going to need lots and lots of squares for it. There are some smaller strips that are going to be used for the border. I think the white border is the thinnest, and then the red and the blue are a little bit thicker to give it some interest and to really maximize the use of your fabric. So this is all the fabric for the red that you need to cut. And it really did happen just about as fast as you saw it. It's not difficult to do, is to hurry up and cut this fabric. And then we're going to do the same thing with the white. I fold it over, smooth it out. Sometimes I press it depending upon how many wrinkles are in it, how bad it is, but most of the time I just start cutting. I can't wait, guys. And then we are going to cut, basically, it's kind of like cutting the exact same thing over and over and over. And here are all the pieces that you need for this particular pattern. It's kind of like just cutting them over and over again. So I start with building the block first. I'm using my magic wand right here, which is a 1/4 inch tool, and I just lay it directly on the center. And now I'm marking on either side. This is one of the ways that you can do a half square triangle, which is marking on either side. The other way is just to mark straight down the center and sew a 1/4 inch on either side. It just depends upon whichever way that you're most comfortable with. Or you cannot use it, and if you have that tape, you and your bed of your machine is flat enough, you can just ride it along that tape and you don't even have to worry about it. I don't have an extension table right here, so I'm going to use the first method, which is sewing on either side of that line a 1/4 of an inch. So it's not marked where I'm sewing next to this. And this is my preferred method on this machine. Different machines, I have different methods that I prefer. So on this machine, I like this because that foot is narrow. It's a scant 1/4. It's not a real 1/4. So it gives me more to play with in regards to squaring it up. And I'll talk more about that in a few moments. And then for this one, I'm actually sewing on the line, or the one that was just before. So I kind of mixed and matched to see which technique I liked the best, just because I was playing. And it turns out I really prefer to sew a 1/4 inch from the center on that particular machine. But you can see I'm switching off here. Okay guys, I just wanted to come and talk to you about this because I have sewn closer to the center than this would have me, just on the inside, maybe 1/8. And the reason why I did that is because that gives me more of an opportunity to use my block lock and square up. So I'll have a larger triangle that I can square up so that I can get perfect, nice, beautiful tips and just a better chance of the quilt coming out looking nicer. So if you draw down the line and you sew to a 1/4 inch to the right, it's just going to make this triangle a little bit smaller. The size that you're cutting this triangle initially and the size that it finishes is only a 1/2 inch difference. So that doesn't give you a whole lot of room for your triangle not to be perfect. And so for me, I find it just a little bit easier if I give myself just a little bit more triangle to work with. So now I'm going to cut these apart and square them up with my block lock. I chain piece the triangles, the half square triangles, because that just makes it a little bit faster. It makes it a lot bit faster actually. So I'm going to take my little tool here and cut them apart because they're all chained together. And I just do that and that. Nice and easy. And that was fast. And now I'm going to grab one to show you guys. This one is definitely, and I'm going to cut it down the center. And like I said, I sew to the inside of the drawn line if you draw it at a 1/4, or just do not go all the way to the 1/4 inch mark. So you have a larger triangle to work with. But don't fret, even though this isn't a 1/4 inch seam, it's certainly enough to keep it together. And my stitch length is on about a 2.2. And now I'm going to square this puppy up once I press it. Hold on. Definitely want to press to the dark side. So dark color is up facing me. You're going to open, and we're just going to roll that back. And that way, when they say pressing towards the dark side, you've got the dark side of the fabric behind the dark, so that way you can't see it. If I put it the other way, you'd probably see it under that white fabric. So we're going to make sure that we do all our triangles with the dark side facing up. I'm going to set my seam, then I'm going to open it and roll it backward, and there we go. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to talk us through this one. I'm taking the light side, which does not have the bump. The bump is behind the blue. And I'm placing it here and I'm locking it in that little space. Then I'm going to pull this down to more than the size that I need. But I want to be sure that I have some fabric over here and over here so that I can cut it away. And that's what's going to give me, I'm making sure that this is nice and full in here. There's no gaps. I can see that that line is running right up against the seam. And I am going to trim to the right and trim off the top. And we'll just pull that out the way. Hands over here at the diagonals, and we're just going to rotate it. And then we're going to pull it down till we get to the perfect size. Got it. And then we're going to trim, and we are going to trim here. All right. And there we have our perfect half square triangle. So let's just do it a few more times. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like one more again. I love Block Lock. You can get, I think you can get these on Amazon. You can certainly get it from the Block Lock website, and bam, there we have it. And this is what really helps me get precision when it comes to sewing up the friendship star, because you really don't want to sew too far in or too far out. You really want to get it so that you get those super crisp points, because this is really all about that block. This is the friendship star block, is the star of the show. And so I am laying everything out. I'm splitting it halfsies on the left and then the middle square. And the reason why is because the left and the right are identical. So it doesn't matter. The left and the right will be identical. So this was just the left side and the center side. Do not get confused here when you pick up your squares, because you can sew the wrong side. It's very, very important that you sew this the proper way. And you see how I have them laid out? I'm just doing the bottom ones right now. And when I pick them up, I do one turn to the right and then I sew. If you sew a different direction, you will have a mess. So be careful when you're doing that. That's the most important part for this, is when you pick them up, do not sew them out of order. And I'm chain piecing. And now we're going to add the last one. So I'm going to pull it towards it and then turn it to the right. It's just repetition, and you get really good at it, and it goes very, very quickly. So now I'm working on what's going to go on either side of the red. And these again are identical. So these you will be able to flip and they will be perfect. You'll see in just a moment. But please see that I'm stacking them, then turning it to the right, and then just putting it right up in there and going for it. And I'm being sure that it lines up, because precision on this one is kind of key. Now, when you're doing a block lock, you press to either side. You have to. However, when you're piecing these together, the better idea for these would have been to press them back open after you finished cutting them. You still want to use the block lock. You still want to press the side, but you might want to press them open before you sew them together. And now I've laid them all out. The left is again identical to the right, but you see that I pressed my seams in towards the center and out on those so that they nest. However, pressing them open is probably the better way to go, especially if you're new. Just do what she says. Press the seams open after you use your block lock. You don't have to use a block lock. I just do, because it really gets it very, very precise. I have to put a couple of pins in this one to hold it. I know there are some people who can knock that out and get perfect points without doing that, but for me, no, I better put some pins in it. And so I'm checking to make sure that my seams are going in either direction. If you are pressing your seams open, yes, you still need to pin. And I'm sewing, and I'm stopping right before I get to the pin. Sometimes I sew over them, but I really just don't think that's the best habit. I think that it's better that you not. Then I open it to check my points, and they look good. And we keep going. So now that the stars are all sewn together, I know that her directions call for you to press seams open. However, for me, I really am team right side, left side nesting seams. So I'm going to take 3 of these since there's 6. I'm going to press 3 to the center. As these ones, they're the last ones that I've sewn. I'm going to press 3 to the center, and then I'm going to press 3 of these going that direction, and then just alternate them, and then make one long line of a vertical strip of 6 stars. I'm going, yeah, sew them together, and then it'll be one line. Let's do it. I did do it that way. It worked out fine for this step. No issues. They nested nicely, and I was able to keep those really sharp points. However, when I worked on the Tula version, I was curious to see what would happen if you just press them all open, and nothing. I still got nice sharp points, and I didn't have to worry about anything. There was nothing to worry about because these patterns are meant to press the seams open. If you're an experienced sewer and you want to think through, which direction they're going to need to be and that kind of thing, go for it. I get it. Because I honestly believe that pressing them to one side does make for a stronger quilt. But like I said in the beginning, you just need to be sure to back stitch and forward stitch on everything and shorten your stitch and you'll be fine. Not an issue at all. Right now I am prepping the strips. She has you sew a couple strips together and then chop them up. Okay, I am going to take 2 of each of these strips and sew them together, and then cut it 3 times, and then do the same thing with the other 2 strips because I have 6 strips here, and that way it should give me 9 strips when I finish. So we're just going to sew 2 strips together on the short end here. Let's do it. Sewing these together cannot possibly get any easier. I'm just putting them right sides together and running them through the machine with a 1/4-inch seam. You can go ahead and press those open too, honestly. I just can't stress enough. Press open, press open, press open. It is how the pattern was written, and there's a reason for it. So go, Donna. Go, Donna.
Oh, pretty.
It's just a strip of fabric. I guess it's a pretty strip of fabric.
Yeah, huh? You got the star. That's nice.
All right. I left that in just so you guys could see how me and my mother, how cool this fabric really is. It's tone on tone, and it is kind of striking. It is more than just a strip of fabric. It's a very, very pretty piece of fabric. I quite am pleased with how that white on white works with this. I'd like to use that again in a Quilt of Valor or an Americana kind of quilt because it's stunning in person. Right now I am sewing the strips together, red and white. If you want, you can pin them together just so that they finish the same. This is not difficult, just running straight seams back to back to back to back until you get this whole sheet. And then I suggest you do what? Press the seams open because this is where it got a little funky. So for this, because I chose to not iron my seams open, when I got to this part and I needed to join them here, I was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? Because some of them are going in some directions, some of them are going in others. So what I ended up doing was going through each individual intersection and figuring out which direction the seam needed to lay, and I pinned it accordingly, and then I will just iron it whichever way I ended up pinning it so that it doesn't look bad, and so that you don't see the seams behind the white, or the white on white will be fine really, but I'll just press it now. I'm going to give this whole thing a good pressing, and then we'll add the borders, and then we'll be done. Okay. And here's what it looks like after being pressed, and just the 2 rows or 2 columns sewn together. Now I need to add the borders. To add the borders, the instructions say, sew all the strips together, put a strip on this side, sew down to the end, trim it so it's even with the quilt, then put a strip on the other side. The proper way to really do it would be to measure your sides and cut them to that measurement and then pin them and then sew them. If you are getting this quilted, for the most part, the quilting will take care of it if it's not laying completely flat. I'm not sure which technique I'm going to use. I think I'm probably going to go for the faster technique because it's me. But again, if you wanted to do it properly, you would take the measurements, cut the strip down to those measurements, pin it, and then sew it. A little more work. So right now we are working on our first border. And it's going to be, they're all the same size. And no, that's not true. The first two are the same size, and the last one is a little bit thicker, which I kind of like. I am doing the method where you measure your quilt, and then you cut the strip, and then you pin it, as opposed to just sewing down one side and then sewing around the other side and then cutting them to be even. It would be faster to do it that way. However, I want this to lay a little bit. You don't always get the flattest lay with that, although after you finish quilting, it never matters because quilting turns everything into amazing stuff. But I figure for this one here, I'll just take my time and do it that way. All right, let's keep going. For this strip in color fabric 1, I went ahead and cut all the way down, even though it's doubled. I wanted the whole gradient, so I grabbed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says to cut 6 of these. It's doubled, but I cut each so that I got the whole gradient. And here are all the pieces cut for the Tula Pink version of Old Glory. Okay, looking at this pattern, it just dawned on me that this is about to get very interesting. Luckily, I have them both in color order, and I was deciding whether I was going to care about which one went with what, let it be random. But what I think I'm going to do is do light with light and then work my way down, and the darks will be with the dark. I think that's going to make for a more striking combination for this, but I don't know. We'll see if this comes out interesting or not. Spoiler alert, it came out interesting. um, I am being sure that the lightest part of this ombre is facing to the right. I am marking them so that they really do lay a certain way. I'm not leaving this all up to chance. I kind of wanted to control some aspects of this. So the lightest is to the right, and then I'm making sure that even though we're going into different color stories, that the lights are lining up and the darks are lining up within each square. And I know that sounds like a lot of work to be figuring out, and you can certainly just leave this to chance and it'll probably still be beautiful. But if you look at my quilt, it kind of moves. It moves in certain directions. It moves within the block. This was done with some care. You know, it wasn't just thrown together. Let's do the exact same thing, but for these ombres. So we know that the smaller strips are going to be borders. And we know after doing it in the other colorway that these strips will be sewn end to end and then subcut into the long strips that are going to make the stripes. So the question is, when I sew these together, do I want to sew this dark end to dark end, or do I want to sew it dark end to light end so that it, oh, interesting. Nope, it's going to be sewn dark to dark because it gradiates that way. Okay. Well, then never mind. I guess the option will come in when it is time to sew the strips together after they've been cut. So that's that for those. And for these here, I need to figure out how I want to do the gradation for the stars. So right now they're stacked from the darkest to the lightest. These are going to be the middle squares, and these are going to be the surrounding squares. So I'm going to play with that a little bit and see what I come up with. This is probably my favorite part of quilting, is getting to pull colors, see what looks good with what, really designing within the design. Um, so I was looking at the way that the friendship star comes together. Now, when you're doing this, you need to be careful and remember that all the blue are fabric number 3, and all the red are fabric number 1. So I needed to be sure that that's where I was putting everything, and I didn't just get this all turned around because it's not red, white, or blue. Um, and because it's an ombre, it's kind of hard to tell. So I am placing the centers in to see if I want to do the darker outer stars with the lighter one, or which way. And I was having a ball playing with the color. I couldn't get enough of this, and I'm glad that I'm taking you guys on this journey with me, because some of you guys out there are probably the same way that I am when it comes to color, and you want to play with it and see what's happening too. But it gets kind of difficult when these colors start to get light. You're like, wait, which one came from the blue pile and which one came from the yellow one? But you'll figure it out. And I looked at that, but I thought that was a little bit too stark. So I pinned it just like I did before once I figured out exactly which ones I wanted to go where. And I'm running it under the needle. And you can see that I pressed these seams open. I didn't press the triangles open. I mean, those were already done and they didn't affect much. So open seams all the way. Let's do this border. I already have half of it on already, right here. And this is how I do them, just to be sure that they lay a little more flat than me just sewing all around it. Otherwise, I'm going to get a big ripply mess, and I don't want that. So we are going to measure this. Try to measure it. Let's mark that halfway point here. Just stick a pin in there. Then I'm going to take the border strip and fold it in half until I get it where I need it. Got it. I feel good about it. Now I'm going to cut it. Now we're going to put it right sides together. What did we do with that pin? Oh, there you are. We want to match up these folds, I should say. They're not seams, but I can see the fold on either side. And we're going to match them up and stick a pin in it. And I always go toward the seam line because I keep a guard on my sewing machine. Otherwise, I would pin the other direction. And now I'm going to go to the end and pin it and then just walk my way back. in this end here. And that's why these borders take so much longer than if you were to just sew them all the way without measuring, because it takes a bit of time to measure. But I find that the end result is much nicer. Now, I don't do a ton of pins. I do them kind of in half, then I split that in half. Maybe I do a few more. Now let's go on ahead and take this over to the sewing machine, and we will sew like the dickens. So back at the machine, we are going to sew it down nice and easy, nothing new here. Just again, I can't stress enough how important it is to just press your seams open and be sure every time you start and stop a seam, you stitch a little bit, you back up a little bit. And then when you end it, you stitch to the end, don't stitch off, and then stitch back and then come on back off. I think that will make for a beautiful quilt that lays flat, that your long armor will accept. I've heard of long armors not taking seams that are pressed open, but I think you'll be fine if you just make sure to lock them. If you guys made it through this whole video, kudos to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks again. Bye-bye.